Call the meeting to order. Please rise for Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing for the invocation. Gary, Pastor Emmons, welcome.
Thank you. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we are grateful tonight. We are grateful that we are a nation under God, that we have a town council that you have appointed. Father, what a privilege and what a responsibility. Father, we thank you for bringing all these people here tonight. We thank you that they care about this community and they are willing to give up their time to serve it. Father, we ask that you bless this group, everyone here tonight, with your presence and your leading. In Christ's name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor Emmons from Grace Church of Fountain Hills. Roll call, please, Bev.
Mayor Schlum?
Here.
Councilmember Dickey? Here. Vice Mayor Archambault?
Here.
Councilmember Hanson? Here. Councilmember Brown?
Here.
Councilmember Leger?
Here.
Councilmember Contino?
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. Start out tonight with a couple of proclamations. First one is family, declaring September 28th, 2009 as Family Day, a day to eat dinner with your children. Some of you, they may be a little far away, but there are video conferences now, so you can do that. Whereas the use of illegal and prescription drugs and the abuse of alcohol and nicotine constitute the greatest threat to the well-being of America's children, whereas frequently family dining is associated with lower rates of teen smoking, drinking, illegal drug use, and prescription drug abuse, whereas parents are engaged in their children's lives through such activities as frequent family dinners, are less likely to have children who abuse substances. Whereas family dinners have long constituted a substantial pillar of our family life in America, now therefore I, J.T. Schlum, Mayor of the Town of Fountain Hills, Arizona, do hereby proclaim Monday, September 28, 2009 as Family Day, a day to eat dinner with your children, and urge all citizens to recognize and participate in its observance, dated the 17th day of September 2009. Next proclamation we have this evening is quite relevant, seeing we just had a fire. It is in one of our residences recently with some injuries, serious injuries, is declaring October 4th through 10th, 2009 as Fire Prevention Week. Whereas the Town of Fountain Hills has committed to ensuring the safety and security of all those living in and visiting our town, and whereas fire is a serious public safety concern both locally and nationally, and homes are the locations where people are at the greatest risk of fire, and whereas roughly 3,000 people die as a result of home fires and burns, and more than 200,000 individuals are seen in emergency rooms nationwide for burn injuries each year, and whereas thermal burns outnumber scalds nearly 2 to 1, but for children aged 5 to and under, scalds outnumber burns roughly 2 to 1, and whereas cooking is the leading cause of home fires and home fire injuries, while heating equipment and smoking are the leading causes of home fire deaths. And whereas Fountain Hills Rural Metro firefighters are dedicated to reducing the occurrence of home fires and home fire injuries through prevention and protection education, and whereas Fountain Hills residents are responsive to public education measures and are able to take personal steps to increasing their safety from fire, especially in their homes, and whereas residents have planned and practiced a home fire escape plan and are more prepared and will therefore be more likely to survive a fire, whereas the 2009 Fire Prevention Week theme, Stay fire smart, don't get burned, effectively serves us to remind all of us of the simple actions we can take to stay safer from fire during Fire Prevention Week and year-round. Now, therefore, I, Mayor J.T. Schlum, do hereby proclaim October 4th through 10, 2009 as Fire Prevention Week throughout the town of Fountain Hills, and urge all citizens in Fountain Hills to protect their homes and families by heeding the important safety measures of Fire Prevention Week 2009 and supporting the many public safety activities and efforts of the Fountain Hills Rural Metro Fire Department. Dated this 17th day of September 2009. Thank you. Next item is scheduled public appearance presentations here from Chaparral City Water Company's District Manager, Mr. Rob Hanford, regarding the state of the town's water resources. Is Mr. Hanford here? Thank you. Welcome, Rob. How are
Good
you?
evening, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks for coming tonight.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. I don't have a PowerPoint, but the reason I'm here tonight is last month I met with the town manager and suggested that on a routine and a regular basis, in a manner similar to other department heads of the town, I'd be available for the town at the town council meetings for questions or comments from staff or from the mayor or the council members. So what I'd like to do is just give a brief update on some of our water resource issues with the town, and then allow plenty of time for questions or comments, if that'd be satisfactory.
Perfect. Thank you.
The first thing I'd like to talk about is our capital budget. We begin that process every June, seeing which projects we built through the year, how our needs have changed. We also do what's called an annual pump efficiency testing, where we test the efficiency of our pump and motors at our water treatment plant, our well, and our booster pump stations. So through that annual exercise, we came up with 3 booster pumps that we are have budgeted and are scheduled to replace. 2 are at our Shea Water Treatment Plant, and 1 is at the Blackbird Pump Station off Blackbird Drive. And those are the only really significant projects we have, as opposed to other years. We're not doing any large main extensions like what we did on Fountain Hills Boulevard, where we extended the that 12-inch main about 10,000 feet. There are no projects of that magnitude coming up this year. The one thing we have done that has been completed, and it also touches another issue I wanted to talk about, is water quality. I'll try to be brief on this. Water from the Colorado contains naturally occurring carbon. It's just part of the makeup of the water. And because of that, when you disinfect the water with chlorine, you can create disinfection byproducts, DBPs. And these disinfection byproducts are facing increased scrutiny from the EPA and in turn the state and county regulatory agencies. What happens is the chlorine we use to disinfect the water reacts with the naturally occurring carbon, and when you add heat or temperature, which we have plenty of in the summertime, you can form what are called trihalomethanes, THMs, and HAA5s, haloacetic acids. And in 2013, the standards for those were going to be reduced, similar to how the standards, the levels, acceptable levels for arsenic were reduced several years ago, from 50 parts per billion down to 10 parts per billion. So we have this, we know this is coming, and what we did do is we completed the design for what's called a chloramination system at our Shea Water Treatment Plant. And chloramination is you just use chlorine and you actually add ammonia to the treatment process and you form what are called chloramines. And what's kind of interesting about this is before World War II, the most common kind of disinfectant for water systems in the United States was using chloramines. But with the need for ammonia and nitrogen for the munitions industry at World War II, that fell out of favor, and now you're seeing to start to come back into favor because when you disinfect with chloramines, you don't create these disinfection byproducts. You get longer residual levels further out in your system. So we've completed the design for that. It's sitting on the shelf, and we plan to go out to bid and construct that in the 2011 budget year. Our budget years are calendar years, excuse me. So that's on water quality. The other thing I did want to mention is areas that you may not be aware of that we do coordinate with the town right now. Every November we have a tabletop emergency preparedness exercise. And for the last 3 years, we've had participation from Rural Metro as an active participant of the exercise. So I just wanted to share that with the mayor and council too, even though almost all of our facilities are underground, and you rarely see what we do on a daily basis. There are these daily coordination efforts going forward. Two other things. Drought. I don't know if the council and the mayor is aware of how severe the drought issue is in California. Our parent company has systems in Southern California, and right now they are under mandatory rationing. There is no more water than what can be delivered, and the main cause for this is, unlike Chaparral City, where we rely on the Central Arizona Project and the Colorado River water for most of our supply, Southern California relies on that, as well as almost in equal measure with the State Water Project, getting water from the San Francisco Bay Delta. And because of an Endangered Species Act issue, those pumps that pump the water to Southern California have been turned off for longer and longer periods, and the water just is not available to Southern California. So you actually are seeing mandatory rationing anywhere from 10 to 15%, and then fairly severe penalties, even doubling or tripling of water bills because there is no water. I just mentioned that in passing, that is not a situation we face here in Arizona. We have a designation of assured supply from the Central Arizona Project. The other thing that favors Arizona is there's a hierarchy of the Colorado River water. There's actually 7 discrete levels of importance of delivery, and the municipal and industrial supply is the 4th highest level, which may not sound good, but it actually is, because there are very large users who would be curtailed before we would ever see a curtailment. So I just wanted to bring that to light, that unlike California, the water supply situation here in Arizona is much different. So just to share that. The last thing I wanted to address was the state trust lands. Currently, those lands are not in what's called our certificated area. At the request of the town and the State Land Department in 2004, we filed and had approved by the Arizona Corporation Commission what's called a order preliminary to our Certificate of Convenience and Necessity. And all that means is, it would allow us to serve that land once we meet a set of conditions established by the Corporation Commission. That order preliminary received a 17-month extension. It expires in April 25th of 2010. And if it does expire, it's not necessarily adverse to process extending those lands into our service area. We would just do a regular filing of a extension of our Certificate of Convenience and Necessity to those lands. And the requirements are much the same. There's a few more reporting requirements for the regular filing, but again, nothing that's not done anywhere else in the state. So even if that order preliminary were to lapse in April of next year, which isn't that far away from now, there's still a mechanism in place to bring those lands into our certificated area. So I just wanted to share that with the council. And that's the extent of my presentation, and be willing to answer any and all questions.
Very good. Thanks for covering so much ground, Mr. Hanford. Any questions from council? Councilmember Brown?
Thank you, Mayor. Several years ago, you pumped it actually tested the water level and the amount of water in our aquifers. And as best as I recall, we had a very successful test. Have we checked the water levels and the tables, and how did that turn out?
Oh, sure.
Thank you.
The council is referring to, we performed a physical availability determination that was submitted and approved by the Arizona Department of Water Resources. And yes, you are correct. Our our wells were first drilled in 1972. And what's happening in many areas of Arizona is the aquifer is in overdraft. You're pumping more water out than is naturally recharged into the basin. Two things about our wells based on that 2004 physical availability determination. Our pumping levels for the water is static before you turn on the pumps. They're at the same level today, 2009, 2004, as they were in 1972. The other measure that's also significant is the ability to extract water from the well, the specific yield. How much per each foot of drawdown when you're pumping that well, how many gallons per minute do you get out? And the specific yield is still very high for those wells, and is actually, in fact, at the same level as they were in 1972. These criteria are monitored through our SCADA system. So it's not someone hanging a plumb bob down the well and checking. It's all automated and goes to a large SQL database and archived and retained. So yes, our groundwater resource is really a treasure.
Thank you.
Do we pull any, does Chaparral City Water use any groundwater?
We do. Currently, our well number 10, which is adjacent to the fire station on Palisades, has naturally occurring arsenic. And it's right at what's called the maximum contaminant level, MCL, which is 10 parts per billion. The value of the arsenic varies from 10 to 11. So unfortunately, it's not in the 7 to 6 range, it's just over. The most cost-effective way to treat at that level of arsenic is to blend. So we do use well 10 for peaking and to help distribute water through the system, but we have to blend it with surface water from other zones to be able to use it.
Meaning CAP water?
Yes, correct. Yes.
And the arsenic's naturally occurring?
Yes. Unfortunately, when they wrote the rules in Washington, Arizona, parts of Colorado, New Mexico, and Utah are blessed or cursed with this naturally occurring arsenic.
And being back to quality, the disinfection byproducts, the THMs?
Yes.
When is that starting, the lower?
I believe 2013.
Okay, but you're at this point pretty confident you're going to need to start using ammonia to go to this different treatment method?
What other cities have done, Scottsdale, other cities have it, maybe are in a more difficult situation because they're typically 50% cap water, 50% groundwater. And it makes it a lot more difficult in the treatment process to balance chloramines and chlorination at your wells and how you balance your supply mix. Since we're primarily over 95% a surface water system, it's very effective to chloraminate our water at that one point of entry into our system and meet the new standards. So what we're hoping is, and what may happen is the chloramines are such an effective disinfectant, we may be able to discontinue chlorination at well number 10, and just by blending the water with the other water, it'll be disinfected to a sufficient degree.
Okay, that's good. Thanks for being on top of that. It's very important, of course.
Right. We don't like surprises.
That and thank you. And the fact we're using 95% of our water is surface water, the aquifer that would serve us or serves maybe like the golf course at Desert Canyon, I believe, uses well water, and there's probably other users of well water I'm not familiar with, but the aquifer level is healthy, and that aquifer, doesn't it cut off pretty much at the McDowell Mountains and go east? So users west of the McDowells may not really have an effect on that aquifer?
Correct. You're correct, Mr. Mayor. We, Fountain Hills, we are all in the Phoenix active management area, that hydrologic basin, but we actually are in a sub-basin. And you're right, the mountains form a natural barrier, if you will. Our aquifer is really unique and specific to the Fountain Hills area.
Okay, that's what I thought. Thank you. Any other questions? Councilmember Leger?
How is the aquifer replenished? Is it replenished naturally? Are we doing any injection, or how will we maintain that level for so long? Is that naturally occurring?
Yes, it's naturally occurring. There are multiple aquifers. The one the sanitary district injects into upper aquifers, we withdraw from lower aquifers, and it's just the historical rain and precipitation events that we get on an ongoing basis.
Thanks, Rob. And also, I just wanted to mention, you took us all on a tour a few months back, and that was very helpful. I appreciate that. And hopefully, if you have any new changes out there or technology, let us know. Maybe we can go for another tour.
You bet.
Very enlightening. Thank you.
Mayor.
Councilmember Dickey?
Thank you. Mayor Rob, I'd be remiss not to mention that our new director at ADEQ was with his specialized in water when he was at EPA, and one of his goals that he's stressing this year is recycle, reuse water. He's very technically astute, and we would welcome you to speak to him anytime you'd like, because I know we're in pretty good shape here in Arizona, but up in Pine we have some hauling issues, and so I think there are other places obviously in Arizona that face a lot more difficulty than we do, and we appreciate what you do.
Thank you. If I could just maybe add to that, if the rest of the West did what Fountain Hills did, you wouldn't have people in such dire straits. And not to be glib, but we recognize we live in a desert. You look at the aerial photographs of town, and the green spots are where treated effluent is used to irrigate. Unlike you go to airports in Los Angeles, and there's spraying water over the parking lots and lawns, and it's just awful. But especially with Fountain Hills and with the zoning and the code requirements, I think we do a very good job.
Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Hanford, could you tell me if it came to a situation where Arizona was cut off from the CAP, would Fountain Hills Aquifer be enough to sustain us?
When we did the physical availability determination in 2004, you have to remember hydrology is almost a black art, and we have our hydrologist, and DWR has their hydrologist. But initially, and I'll use the term acre foot, and an acre foot is 43,560 square feet, 1 feet deep, a little over 300,000 gallons. So when our hydrologist did this study in 2004, they came up with a number that our aquifer could produce 19,000 acre feet a year for 100 years and still meet the drawdown requirements established by DWR. 19,000. Last year we used about 6,600 acre feet.
So we have enough to sustain us for more than 100 years.
Correct. But again, with the black art caveat, DWR gave us an allocation of just under 9,000 acre feet a year. And currently we have a contract with the Central Arizona Groundwater Replenishment District. Right now it's only at 2,000 feet. It could be bumped up all the way to that almost 9,000 foot figure per year.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you again, Rob, and if there's nothing else, we'll see you at the next home football game.
Go Falcons.
Yep, go Falcons. Thank you. One more. If you would, at this time where there's no comments or questions from the public, unless you want to fill it a call. Excellent. We're going to get right to that next. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you again, Mr. Hanford. All right, vote now to call to the public. Bev?
David Adler.
Good evening, Mayor Schlum, council members, commissioners,
Good evening.
town clerk, especially Mr. Andrew McGuire. I'll hold off on the question to the speaker. I submitted a letter to the editor, Mr. Chernow, and perhaps giving him the benefit of the doubt. It was not published, perhaps because the graffiti news was on the front page and there was not enough room. But what I'd like to do is read it to you. I intended this to be public information. The title of the letter was "Bird is the Word." For those poetically inclined, I'm sure Monsieur Cyrano de Bergerac, a fictional character in a play, 1640s Paris. With his thrusting rapier in hand, he was a swordsman, a baker, a guitar instructor, would explain nest feather, his nest. This is directed directly at Mr. McGuire. Thusly, feather as in lightweight. I detect a smirk on your face. Is that a smirk?
Mr. Adler, this is called the public, so just
Okay.
move along. You have 3 minutes.
Nest feather, his feather, as in lightweight, is no longer useful or functional in its intended original purpose, the bird, but has now taken on another role for the bird in comforting its own nest. This is a public letter addressed to the Fountain Hills residents. $2.9 million divided by 24,000, perhaps, individuals in the town. It's $120 a year for over a 7-year period. Approximately $18 per year per individual. I go on to say a small price to pay, but 24,000 individuals paid that sum needlessly. I say needlessly because there was no success in the campaign. Generals that do not succeed are dismissed. That's in addition to my letter. If our decision makers were quicker, more vigilant, more streetwise, it need not have been wasted. Stay out of the court if you can. That doesn't mean you can, but stay out if you can. Bring the Fountain enterprise, I take it to be the development, to fruition and come in under budget. 7 years plus would be a reasonable time frame to make back those $2.9 million that I consider, a person of one, considers a waste. And
Yeah.
apply that $2.9 million. How much time do I have left?
You're out of time. I'll give you 30 more seconds.
Okay, what I'm going to ask is that Mr. Shernow publish the remainder of the letter in his next opportune moment. And as to the Speaker, if I have time left, how does California, who's running out of money, the water company start charging 2 and 3 times? If there's no water, $79 an hour for automobile workers, General Motors did not have the money anymore. How does he sustain that position that they are now charging 2 and 3 times for no water available?
Mr. Adler, thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
We're going to be unable to respond to what you said since those items are not agendized, but perhaps Mr. Hanford could work with you offline. Thank you. Who's next, Bev?
That was the only closed
Okay.
public.
Thank you very much. I want to mention a couple things here. Positive things here, happenings, parties, whatever you may call it. Ballet Under the Stars is coming September 24th at 7 o'clock at Fountain Park if you haven't taken advantage of that. Beautiful night, kind of a montage of what they offer down at Ballet, Arizona, but it's a free event Under the Stars at Fountain Park, so I encourage everybody to come out there the 24th at 7 o'clock. The next night, the PTO has a carnival over at Four Peaks Park for families that want to bounce around in a bunch of games. Oktoberfest also starts September 25th and Saturday the 26th from 5 till 10, and I will be there to tap the keg, a very fun event for the community to come out. That event is also free. Of course, there's beverages and foods to purchase. We have a paper shredding event on September 26th. It starts at 9 a.m. Right here at the library parking lot, and of course those things do fill up quickly, so 9 a.m. until the truck is filled. We've got a paper shredding event at the library on September the 26th, and then also on September the 26th there's a guided hike through the McDowell Mountain Preserve. I'm going to try to get to that. They leave from up by Copper Wind Resort at 8 a.m. Please get there at least 15 minutes early, again on the 26th. A hike, and then we have our first proposed open house, or proposed general plan open house on the 28th in the evening at the community center on our general plan on the September 28th at 5 o'clock at the community center. And then a most exciting event that started last year is the Homecoming Parade, which is Wednesday, September 30th at 5:30 right down the Avenue of the Fountains, which is just a tremendous time. It's come together, a lot of supporters, a lot of folks volunteering their efforts to be behind our Fountain Hills High School Falcons, and a fun event for everybody. Homecoming Parade, again, Wednesday, September 30th at 5:30, and then the tailgate party for the actual game is, of course, Friday night at 5 on October 2nd. Both of those events are free as well. Well, that's all I had. We'll move on now to the consent agenda. Request a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All right, roll call, please.
Councilmember Dickey?
Aye.
Mayor Schlum?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Shambo?
Aye.
Councilmember Lachey?
Aye.
Councilmember Hanson? Councilmember Cantino? Councilmember Brown?
Aye.
Mayor 7-0.
Thank you very much. Next item on the regular agenda, number 8, consideration resolution 2009-38 approving of a donation agreement for the transfer of ownership of 2 parcels from the Lakeside Village Homeowners Association. Julie, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. A couple of months ago, the Lakeside Village Association contacted the town and wanted to offer 2 parcels of property that they owned on Saguaro Boulevard to the town that would hopefully anchor the Fountain Park. The parcels are on the southeast corner of El Lago and Saguaro and on the northeast corner of Saguaro and Panorama. The town would like to accept these 2 parcels and has worked with the Homeowners Association over the past couple of months to make this happen. The donation agreement was signed by the board on September 9th. The cost of maintaining that property that will be absorbed into our current contract that we have now. In other words, there'll be no additional cost to maintain those parcels. They'll just be included with our other town property if the council approves it. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions the council may have.
Good, thank you. I don't recall, Councilmember Brown, were you on when we went over those items? Do you recall that? Okay. I recall that, and I think it was pretty well received. So here we are actually accepting the donation through this agreement. All right. Anyone from the public on this item?
Yes, Mayor. Dan Halpin?
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, council members, good evening. I come here with no paper and only a pen. These properties that they're asking the town to accept, there's other reasons for it, hidden reasons. They want to dissolve the Lakeville Association, which has, I believe, about, I'm not good with the figures, but I think about 38 HOAs and approximately 930 members that pay $48 a month, a year. So there's no reason for them to get rid of this. They can sustain it. The other reasons are that they want to get rid of it, and I can't see why. And I really ask you not to accept this piece of property. The association can handle it, and I don't see any reason for it. And seeing I'm the only one here out of 38 HOAs, I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Halpin. Related to that, Rick, is it the HOA that we're in, that we're accepting this from, the Lakeside HOA? So their board members would have voted to transfer the land to us. Is that correct, or Julie?
Mayor, that is correct. The board met on September 9th and approved the transfer of the property if the town would accept it. And the town intends to keep the property in exactly the condition, or better, that the HOA did. The town doesn't have any intentions to build anything on it. It's just sort of the anchor to the park, and so the aesthetics of it will remain unchanged. If the town chose not to accept these parcels, the association has received an offer from a local business right next to it that wants to use that parcel for a signage. So if the town doesn't accept it, they likely will accept the offer to sell that parcel. And that's the one on the corner of El Lago and Saguaro.
Okay, thank you. All right. Just a moment. Let's first get a
That's all I want to do.
motion here. Go ahead,
Mayor,
Councilmember Dickey.
move to approve Resolution 2009-38, accepting the donation agreement for transfer of 2 parcels from Lakeside Village Homeowners Association to the town, subject to completion of ongoing due diligence, and authorizing the mayor, town manager, the clerk, the town attorney to take all steps necessary to complete the transaction.
All right, do we have a second? Second. All right, more discussion. Mr. Halbin, did you have something else that would, feel free to come forward. Thank you.
I get smarter as I go along. Mr. Mayor, there are 38 associations, I believe, with this Lakeville Association. Not one of them has been contacted about the selling of these properties, but yet they want our money every year. We have not been contacted about anything, and that's why I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, any discussion on this motion? Vice Mayor.
Probably an Andrew question, or maybe it's a Julie question. Who has legal ownership of these parcels? And it seems to be, Stan's brought it into question that there might be multiple owners.
Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor Archambault, I believe the Lakeside Village Association is the current owner, and that association is intending to dissolve as of December 31st, 2009.
Okay, and that'll be flushed out as we're going through the process of accepting them.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Vice Mayor, we've actually done our due diligence on the title side and are satisfied that this is the association that holds title to the property. The due diligence that's still ongoing is the review of the environmental assessment when it comes back from the consultants to ensure there aren't any things on the sites that we're not aware of.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Julie.
Councilmember Contino.
Thank you, Mayor. The waterfalls that they have on the one side of El Lago down there close to, I can't think of the name of the street right now, but it's right there. They were supposed to be all filled in and environmentally put back the same way. That's never been done. And are we sure all the debts are clear out of this whole thing? There's no debts attached to anything?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Contino, we haven't come across anything that would indicate there's a recorded lien or any kind of outstanding mortgage on the property. What we do know for sure, though, is that this property, along with everybody else in the Lakeside Association, which includes all the different HOAs that have been mentioned, is subject to a set of CC&Rs that are going to be virtually impossible to ever have removed. So the town is taking the property subject to the same CC&Rs as everybody else within the association. In order to remove those CC&Rs, it required both the consent of all the property owners and their lenders.
Okay.
So
Didn't they agree to do that fill in a long time ago when they stopped the water coming down there on those waterfalls?
That I'm not certain. I know that many of the HOAs were
That's
abandoning.
been a few years back.
Many of the HOAs were abandoning some of their water features because they had certain requirements that were not able to keep up. Perhaps Mr. Ward has more info on those items.
Mr. Mayor and Council, they did come in with their plans. They talked to us about abandoning the ponds. They properly did that. Those were concrete-lined ponds, and so there wasn't any infiltration that went into the aquifers to start off with, and so they abandoned those, punched holes in that concrete to make sure there wouldn't be any water holding later on, and we feel that it was properly done.
Okay. Councilmember Hanson, did you have your hand up for something?
I was just wondering if there was any way to clarify for the other HOAs. I mean, if it seems odd that they would not be aware that Lakeside Village Homeowners Association was dissolving. That's kind of surprising. And it seems like they would be made aware that they would be no longer having to incur this $48 a month or whatever the cost was. And I guess that would just be a question I'd like to have answered. Maybe Dennis knows.
Does anyone on the council have information related to that? Or town staff here?
I do.
Councilmember Brown.
I live in one of the 38 HOAs, and we received a letter I'm going to say 3 or 4 months ago, maybe longer than that, about dissolving the master plan HOA, and every HOA is going to stand on its own. But we received that letter some time ago. We were notified. Now, I can't speak for everybody else, but Lakeside Villas was notified.
Okay. So this appears to be an example of the HOA doing their best to remove assets from their responsibilities, and in this case, give it to the town so that the town can make good use of it that would protect perhaps the other HOAs or these significant entry areas. So that's good. Mr. Polvey, you might have a update on
Mayor
that area?
Slum, thank you. If I could just make one comment regarding that also, as one of the councilmen just stated, he being a resident in that area, and we own investment property in that area, and it was no secret that what you're talking about tonight was going to be brought up. We were also mailed the same thing. Any owner in that Lakeside Association, which is the other HOAs, were sent out notices, and I agree it was about 3 months ago. So to say that no one knew about it, it would surprise me, because I think every resident owning property was given the same notification.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Polvey. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Yes. Was there a resident with more information to help us make our decision as best as possible? Welcome. Please state your name and address.
My name is Mary Mullen. I live at 17224 East Quail Ridge Drive, excuse me, Fountain Hills, and I'm the president of Lakeside Village Association. That's my name on that donation document. I would be happy to answer any questions. There seems to be a lot of confusion about what's going on.
Seemed pretty straightforward to me, but
Okay,
it's always
then
good
there's
to
no question.
answer questions when we have these come up. Any
There-
questions of council for the president of the HOA that's dissolving? All right.
Thank you, Dennis. Thank you, Fred. Thank you, Mary.
I appreciate the dedication or the allowing the town to take these.
For the record, there are 16 sub-associations,
16.
and they have all been notified, and they were also asked in that letter that we sent out in April, if they had objections, and I have copies of their returns, and I only had one association that had objection. All the other 15 were delighted that we're going away.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
All right, we've had good enough discussion on this item. All in favor indicate by, you're in favor of this? Hold on, Mr. Halpin. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Mayor 7-0.
Mr. Halpin, I'd be happy to talk to you afterwards. We're going to move forward, Mr. Halpin. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is consideration of special event application submitted by DCB Extreme Adventures for the Tour de Scottsdale bicycle race scheduled to be held October 4th, 09, 8 and 10 a.m. with cyclists traveling through Fountain Hills along Fountain Hills Boulevard, Saguaro Boulevard, and exiting onto Shea Boulevard. Julie?
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. This is a special event. This will be the 5th year that this event has come through the town of Fountain Hills. It originates in Scottsdale, goes north to Rio Verde, and then comes south through Fountain Hills and on Saguaro Boulevard, and then back to Scottsdale. It is a charity event with the proceeds benefiting the McDowell Sonoran Conservancy, and it will have MCSO that will assist them through the town of Fountain Hills, and I'd be happy to answer any other questions the council may have.
I appreciate that. Just mainly not on consent, just to make sure the public's aware of what's going on. And
yes.
Obviously, an event probably raises funds for some good efforts. Any questions for council? Look for a motion to approve special event application as presented.
Mayor, I move to approve ordinance 0910.
Nope.
I'm sorry. I went to the wrong one, didn't I?
It's all right. I'm actually just looking for a motion to move to approve the special event application as presented. You make that motion?
I make that motion.
All right. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. Any discussion? Anyone from the public on this item?
No, sir.
All right. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Mayor
Right.
7-0.
Thank you, Julie. All right, number 10, discussion of ordinance 09-09, amending the Fountain Hills Town Code relating to adjustments to development fees for the town of Fountain Hills. Julie.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. At the last meeting in August, the council wanted to have some more time to review the ordinance for the development fees and to ask any additional questions. So I'm here this evening to answer any questions that the council may have or provide any more further information. Hopefully, I've provided everything that you've asked for, but again, I'm here and happy to answer any other questions that the council or the public may have.
Good. And we're just, my intent was to take this slowly, and obviously there's been more discussion, which is what taking it slowly can offer, opportunities for people to share their opinions and to get to know the topic more thoroughly. So we've taken, I'm not sure how many public meetings we've had now, but quite a few. So this item is now for discussion again tonight and would come back before us at the next meeting for acceptance. Is that the idea?
Yes, Mayor.
All right. All right. And you were forwarded some questions, and you forwarded out some answers to the council related to, well, let me first see if there's people from the public, I'm sure, here that want to share some opinions.
Yes, Mayor, we have 3 speaker cards. Joe Ciota,
Thank you.
Mark Dorman, and then Frank Ferrara.
Mr. Ciota.
Mr. Mayor, council members, officials, Joe Ciota, 9819 North Sunrise Circle, Fountain Hills, resident since 1979, taxpayer since 1985. I'm here tonight as the new vice president and the voice of the Fountain Hills Association of Licensed Contractors. This association is a group of industry professionals dedicated to outstanding craftsmanship and service to our community and the surrounding areas. Many of the members in this association have lived here longer than I have. We take pride in our business and our reputations, and we take pride in Fountain Hills. Last night we held our first meeting of the year. Deputy Town Manager Julie Getty was our primary guest speaker. Julie gave us an excellent presentation of the annual development fee report and an explanation of the proposed increases to the development fees. Julie also did a superb job of answering several tough questions with her knowledge and expertise on these issues. Thanks again, Julie. There you are. Following the Q&A, and after Julie left, we members continued discussion of these proposed increases for at least another hour. As I have learned it, the current development fees are already having a negative impact on people's decisions to build a home or a builder's desire to break ground on residential or commercial projects, especially multi-residential projects. Construction and development sales tax has long been the major source of revenue for this town. To implement increases in development fees would put a significant stranglehold on future opportunities for prospective home buyers and builders and commercial development. There has been talk the last several years of this town becoming more business friendly, and progress has been made in many areas. But voting to increase these fees would not be conducive to making any new friends in the business community at this time. Other avenues must be explored. We, the licensed contractors, do oppose these increases. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ciota.
Mark Dorman.
Welcome, Mr. Dorman.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, members of the council, and I want to compliment Julie, too. She had a good presentation last night and a lot of difficult questions, so thank you. I've corresponded with each of you over the past couple of months and talked in person with a few of you, and I think you know my position that I'm opposed to any increase in the commercial development fees. I don't have any argument with the fact that the town needs to raise revenue. That's a given, but I think the reasoning here is faulty. I think that raising commercial fees is going to have a detrimental effect on our downtown development in the future. It's important to look at the history of downtown Fountain Hills. If you take the 4 blocks of Plat 208, take the Holiday Inn and the Plaza Waterfront, over 35 years we've built about 75 buildings. That's about 2 a year. It's not very much. And when you look at it, there's really only about 4 of those buildings that are owned by national developers, the kind of people who can afford big development fees. All the rest of them have been built by kind of small town mom and pop developers, husband and wife, family or small investor groups. And those are the kind of people that have been the backbone of downtown Fountain Hills for these 35 years. They've created new businesses and jobs. And just a few examples, new projects, the Lakeview Office Center on Sorrel, just north of Palisades, they would have to pay, under this scenario, about a $200,000 impact fee on top of everything else. The Plaza Waterfront project, about $600,000. And the Pals Inn, I hope you take your dogs there. It's a nice family-owned business. They would have to pay $105,000 on top of all the other fees. And the town didn't help them with anything. No expedited plan reviews, no waivers of any fees. They even paid for the alley in back of their building. I've talked with the owners of each of these buildings, and each of them say emphatically, if presented with these fees in this scenario today, they would not build in Fountain Hills. And that's bad news. So I just want to say you're sending a great message to the town by hopefully adopting our new downtown vision. But I think if you adopt these increased and very high commercial fees, you're going to be sending a message that we want you to come to downtown Fountain Hills to build, but we're going to penalize you like crazy if you want to do it. So I encourage you, please do not increase our commercial fees. Let's make Fountain Hills a very competitive place to build so that people will come here and build new buildings and create jobs. Thank you.
Thank you again. Mr. Ferrara, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. My name is Frank Ferrara. I'm President, CEO of the Fountain Hills Chamber of Commerce. I just want to make a short statement. I delivered today the Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors position on commercial impact fees, lest anybody wonders why, because obviously that's our main thrust, the commercial area. We think the timing might not be right, especially due to the fact that the legislature has a 2-year moratorium between June of this year and June of 2011. That is in the budget and signed. To pass it now might be, the timing is what we're looking at, especially due to the fact that we just finished, as you all know, a very great visioning process, and we would hope that we could attract major developers in this. So basically, I'm not going to say any more. You all know what the letter said. If you've read it, if you haven't read it, obviously maybe you will. And in any case, that's the position of the Fountain Hills Chamber of Commerce. Thank you.
Thank you. Good. It certainly seems like over the extended amount of time here, the Contract Association's gotten together and spent a lot of good time on it, so that input is appreciated, as well as our local architect and the Chamber of Commerce. So good dialogue, and again, we're here to discuss it only here tonight. And right now I'll ask for questions from the council for Julie or other staff. Councilmember Dickey.
Mayor, thank you. I have a process question. I believe at the last meeting when the majority of the council voted to continue this, it was pretty clear that it wasn't unanimous, and I certainly didn't want to continue it. But my question is that when you continue an item that was an action item that had an attachment of an ordinance and it had a suggested motion and et cetera, it was an action item, why wouldn't our expectation be that that would be the item on the agenda tonight? I would like some clarity on how that happened, because I think it was pretty clear that we were ready for action that night. We decided to continue it, and now we're discussing it again instead of taking the action on that. So I kind of want to know how that occurred.
Let's address that, and then I can speak to it. If Rick, town manager, do you have anything on, any reply to that question of Councilmember Dickey?
Well, Mayor, Council, what you see on the agenda was the staff's, unfortunately, their understanding of what you wanted to see tonight, that there really isn't any more to that than that. And I apologize that that came out that way, but that is what our intention was, to place on the agenda what you wanted to do tonight. And actually, after the discussion, very clear as to what your direction was, more than our understanding was what that motion was going to look like, or what this was going to look like. We were a little fuzzy about what the numbers were going to look like, and so we felt like probably the intention was that you wanted to discuss that, give us some direction as to where those impact fees were going to lie, and then we would go on from there and prepare that for the next council agenda. So benevolent intentions, but obviously not what you intended, so apologize for that.
Mayor, maybe just for Andrew, what does it mean when you continue an item?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Dickey, it generally means that the item moves forward as it was. The problem is not necessarily with whether it was continued or not, it's with the agenda as it reads today. And we are required under state law to provide an agenda that will provide notice to the general public on what is to be decided, and the agenda is very clear that it's discussion without action. So I would be reluctant to say that the continuation would do anything to affect what the agenda actually has on it.
Well, Mayor, thank you, and I don't expect that we would take action tonight. I also wanted to point out that the packet indicated that there was an attachment of the ordinance, but I don't see that in the packet either. So I just, I'll take my own responsibility for reading the word discussion and thinking consideration, but I also think that we had every reason to expect that that item would be the same as it was then, and that we would be taking action tonight. I'll let someone else go, and then we can talk more about the issue itself. Thanks.
Yep. And Councilmember Dickey, my expectation was that we would actually have made a decision tonight as well, but I did review the packet prior to it being posted on the website. I saw that it said discussion. I didn't have an issue with that. I had other questions that I posted to staff, and also questions related to the moratorium that I wanted to discuss. So in light of the fact that the moratorium has been signed, I didn't see a great reason to have a decision made tonight. So I didn't see that as that's something I suggest changing. But I was kind of with you. I wouldn't have been surprised if we had it for a decision tonight either. All right. Any questions for staff related to development fees? Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. Julie, last night there was a lot of discussion about the different fees between the cities and around us. And one of the questions that came up was our fee based, or the fees that we're looking at, are they based on cities and towns that have sewer and water, or were those fees taken out when we were looking at comparing apples to apples with the different cities around us?
Mayor Slum, Vice Mayor Archambault, this chart, this comparison of the Fountain Hills compared to other cities with fees, this chart is non-utility development fees. So in other words, there's no sewer or water in any of these fees. They're considered non-utility.
So if you were to look at Queen Creek, or you were to look at Chandler, or you were to look at Avondale, the fees that we were looking at were apples to apples.
That's correct.
Okay. The other thing that came up last night was taking the commercial proposed fee and applying it against different businesses around town. And I had a discussion with Bob Rogers, so maybe Bob Rogers would want to get up here and talk about that. But, and Julie, you could probably certainly answer this one. If a plan comes to the building department, it's not the zoning that the property has, but the use of the building is how the fee is calculated. Is that correct?
You're probably better off asking Peter Johnson that question.
Okay, well, I see Peter's here. For a different reason, but...
Mayor, Council, the type of building is determined by the designer and architect of the structure, and so the building code has classifications for industrial, commercial, multifamily, hazardous occupancies. Everything's calculated in the code book. So if someone presents an office building, we know how to classify it as an office. If it's a mercantile, retail type establishment, the code and the intended use determines that. So the zoning, I'm not aware of that affecting the fee. It would only be the classification of building as the code defines it.
So the fear that was floating around last night was that think it was $9. Was it? I forgot what that proposal is. $9.37? Yeah, $9.37 would be charged against a building that was maybe a 900 square feet office and the rest of it was warehouse, used maybe in a construction atmosphere. The calculation that was done last night was one that calculated the $9.37 per square foot on that whole building, which would make it astronomically
Right.
impossible to...
When you have a building that's, let's say, warehouse, and it has a small office associated with it, the office is what they call an incidental use. The primary function is the storage. So you'd base your fees on the use of the building. If the building, on the other hand, was 90% office with 10% storage, then it would be an office building. There are some definitions, but some buildings are so unique that you'd have to look at what they're really doing in them on a case-by-case basis.
So I wanted to clarify that because it led me on an odyssey today that pretty much took up my whole day of going around and asking staff, and I think Julie was about tired of me calling her all the time. But I wanted to point out some differences because oftentimes we act on fear of the unknown instead of seeking out the answer. And I did a quick calculation on a building such as mine. Yeah, thanks, Peter. Such as mine. And with an 11,000 square foot building, what did I come up with here? My fee would be about $60,000. In 1999, when I built the building, it was $27,000. So it's roughly about doubled in the last 10 years. And then I had to ask myself, was that out of line? Could I build the same building that I built in 1999 for the same costs, or would I expect those costs to double? And the answer I came up with that was it was more than double. Because of the cost of labor, the cost of materials, everything goes up. And so then I started looking at, commercial, and I said, why is the commercial driving so high? And what I came across was, in 2006, the difference between what we had built up to that point and what we had left to build out was about 758,000 square feet of commercial. Today, the difference between what we have built out in commercial and what we have left to build out is 2,189,000 square feet. Now you got to ask yourself, how do we increase our commercial space? Well, it becomes pretty apparent that we've been listening to the citizens all along about being business friendly. And it was interesting that phrase was used tonight because oftentimes you want to say, well, be careful what you ask for, you may get it. Here's what happens. If you increase commercial development, you increase vehicle miles traveled per square foot on a national basis, the statistics that they use to come up with these formulas. Therefore, you create more demand on your infrastructure. So the more commercial that you generate or you create, the more demand you have on your infrastructure, the more you have to spend to maintain the same level of service. So what's happened is we've been proactive in doing overlay plans, in annexing the state trust land, in creating the resort properties. Elman's property has a resort on it that's considered commercial. We've done the overlay plan in the downtown area. You can have higher density in commercial now. You can go up 2 stories. So we've doubled the footprint in certain areas. That's how we got to the 2 million square feet of commercial from 758 to build out. Well, that drives the infrastructure. That drives what we have to do. It may determine that as we get to build out and the Swaback plan becomes a reality and we drive all that traffic down here, we're going to have to put a roundabout in there at $7 million. We're going to have to widen Fountain Hills Boulevard at $7 million. And I came full circle and I said, well, it's no wonder that it's going from $3 a square foot to $9. But now there's the aggravating factor. In 2001, it was proposed commercial was $2.25 a square foot. but the council took 51 cents. Then in 2006, I'm looking for that number, 540, and we took 3. So we almost cut that in half. And so now what we're seeing is we've not only been proactive and trying to be business friendly, but we're also playing catch up to pay the piper. You guys put 2 and 2 together.
I think you spelled it out very well. It's a balancing act that we have to
It is. It's
manage.
a balancing act, because what we don't want to do is we don't want to put things over on the citizens, but we have to make the citizens pay for the services that they demand, and we've got to stop reaching in the town's coffers and expecting the town to have a sustainable revenue source if we're going to continue to underfund projects. Now, I'm not sitting up here saying $9.37 is it. What I'm doing is I'm trying to lay down the track and the path that I followed today to get to where I'm at now. The same thing happens when you go to residential. We had, let me find the number here. In 2006, we had 4872 residential units left to build out. That included the 1,350 in the Ullman property. Today, we have 2,534 residential units left to build out. That tells you how many we've built between then and now. But as the infrastructure demands are there and the pressure to build more infrastructure to keep the same quality of life, you're spreading it over a lower number of residential units, which is why the residential units are doubling. Which is why when I look at some of the cities and towns that were in the charts, and you look at something like Paradise Valley that's landlocked and almost built out, why it explains to me why their development fee might be $16,000 or $18,000 or $19,000. It's because it's like the citizens buying in, and there might be only 5 lots left in Paradise Valley unless you're redeveloping. You know, I don't know if they pay, have you built anything in Paradise Valley, if they pay development fees on redevelopment?
Councilmember Brown? Yeah.
So that kind of brings that scenario around and why that's where it's at. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Other comments? Councilmember Dickey?
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to address the budget bill just real quickly because, yes, it was signed for sure. But the two things going on. One is that the League of Cities and Towns, when a special session is called, it's called for usually a very specific reason, 1 or 2 reasons. So it have this one in particular was called for the budget. So these items, there are several items. This is one of them, the construction sales tax freeze, the building code freeze, and this moratorium freeze, it's actually more extensive than we talk about. That was in that budget bill. The grounds for challenging it is that it's beyond the call or the scope, however you want to put it, for the special session. So it's not a dead issue right at this point. Another thing, just to say that when, working for the state, this next month will be 10 years, nothing's ever done when it's done. So the governor had indicated early on a favor, that she favors local control, she favors local decision making. As a former county supervisor and other places where she's been, she appreciates a lot of the things that we do. If to say the legislature got in session next year in January, or maybe before, but in January, if something like this should move forward to again address this, I wouldn't count it out. I absolutely have no information that it's going to happen, but I wouldn't count it out. So I don't want to have July of 2011 be the definite drop dead date. It could be as soon as January of 2010. Now, I want to also address, and I appreciate what Joe was saying because he's lived here a long time. I've lived here a long time too, 26 years going on. And I said this before when we've discussed this. I'll say it again, probably next time too. But I don't feel that it's fair or equitable that residents, that we are bearing a great deal of the responsibility for growth-related infrastructure needs. some of the expenses. These development fees don't cover all the expenses. Some of the expenses should be covered by those yet to come. And to address some of the stuff that Councilman Brown had said last time about what have we done since we don't have really a property tax to speak of. But when I was here, we had property taxes for the roads, for the fire district. We have a sanitary district right now, obviously a school district. We had property taxes that paid for the preserving the mountains for this center, the community center. We talked about that last night at the museum. When it was mentioned that, geez, if we tried to do something like that now, how successful would it be? But we were successful. We voted yes. The downtown area, the infrastructure that has gone in there, the postcard view, and now me as a resident, you all as residents are driving on roads that are not in good shape, that we don't have good feeling about the fact that they will be in good shape. They're in rough shape. We have storm water management that will more and more become our responsibility, and as we grow and as there's stores with a lot of concrete, that becomes more and more an issue, and it is a mandate. We've been told several times we need another fire station, and that is due to increased population and increased area of where people are living. Non-Fountain Hills resident-owned businesses or people that build buildings that do not live here don't cover the expense of public safety, fire protection, and obviously they're not covering parks and any transit. We're talking about transit a lot for people in need here because we really have no property tax to speak of. Businesses and others who want to invest in our beautiful town or beautiful downtown center plan will not be lured by low development fees if indeed we also have failing infrastructure or a town that is in not very good financial state, or we have a budget that we have to keep cutting year after year. I don't think that low development fees will lure you to a place like that. As a matter of fact, it's been studied. The relationship between economic development and these low fees is just not there. On the state level, and now in Fountain Hills, I have a hard time understanding some of this accommodation for some groups when I, in my opinion, feel that they are in conflict with maybe the good of the entire town, and including even those groups. We've had low taxes in the state of Arizona. We've had low taxes in Fountain Hills, low fees. This is the right-to-work state, yet it really hasn't spurred the kind of economic development, the economic activity and investment in the town of Fountain Hills to sustain us. We had 51 cents. And so I can relate. I understand when you say this $1,000 and that $1,000, but I would also say check the figures a little bit more too. So we're talking about development fees that already exist. So we need to look at the difference, not taking that whole amount, to try to hone it in a little bit more reasonably. My last comment has to do with the timing, and we've talked about this before, being paralyzed and by the environment of our economy. But our bad timing, or what is our message, is so we don't want to raise development fees until there's a time where we won't collect them. I'm just trying to figure that part out. We are on the verge. We're on the verge of the Elman property. You know, this is going to take a while, but we're on the verge of that. So let's not raise the development fees at the time when we can actually collect them that will help us 10 and 20 years down the line. I don't think, nobody from Elman has contacted me or from any of the developers who have interest in downtown. I feel like they probably on some level appreciate predictability. Hopefully we can work with people like we have in the past as far as, like you said, expedited permitting or what is it when you have the, you don't have to go back as far, from the sidewalks or the 2 stories or a little bit higher once in a while. So there are ways to work, and in addition, these development fees help us do that because maybe it can translate into something that we really need. So, again, and again, I'm not like Mike, I'm not sitting here like, it's got to be this, it's got to be this, but we paid $60,000, this council, or some of us, or most of us, agreed, staff recommended, we agreed. We paid for this, which I'm assuming, again, we feel is a valid measure of partially paying for the price of growth. So I think I've said about all I can on this subject. We're discussing it again, and we're going to have one more chance, I hope, to vote on it.
Thank you. Other comments? Councilmember Brown.
Councilmember Dickey, that was well stated. And I will say again, I struggle with the fact that if you have a lot next door to you on Trevino that has been ready to build on since 1976, and that lot has been there, and people have been paying their county taxes on it, and they've been paying their dues on it since 1976, why do they get tagged with a development fee when they've paid the same dues everybody else, and the town was clearly designed, every lot in the commercial area was designed to meet the streets. I struggle with trying to charge a family moving to Fountain Hills that's going to move into an established lot in an established neighborhood that they've been paying taxes on, granted, to help pay for the downtown town hall and the library and the mountains. They've all paid their taxes too. And then you talk about sustainability. My goodness, if you think that the development fee is going to be sustainable for Fountain Hills, I'd like to have some of what you're smoking, because it isn't going to happen. I mean, we're going to run out of land to build on, and we're going to run out of buildings to build. And we need to be looking way beyond that. The commercial aspect of it, and I say the same thing to the commercial as I do to the residential. It's not fair. It's simply not fair. People have paid their taxes on these lots. They've paid to fix the streets, and now we're going to bring them to town. We're going to charge them the same permit fee, and we're going to tag them for $10 a foot more just because they're wanting to bring a business to town. I really struggle with that. Now, I agree that we should have a development fee, but I also think that if that's the case, the field needs to be leveled, and everybody should have to pay the same development fee. Did you pay a development fee? And did you pay? No. Your homes were built and constructed, and most of the businesses were built and constructed before we started tagging the development fee on. So let's level the playing field and just bring everybody up to speed, and if everybody paid the one-time tax of the development fee, a development tax, because that's what it is. It's not a fee, it's a tax, it's a three-letter word. And I just can't get past, especially in the existing lots in the town of Fountain Hills that's been here for 40 years. And then we're asking the people to pay more because they're going to generate more traffic, and well, I struggle with that. And I probably won't support. I will support where we're at, but I'm not going to support very much more. And I just don't think it's a financially good move for the town.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Anyone else? Councilmember Dickey?
Just to a couple of your points, if it's an undeveloped lot, the assessment of it is really a lot different than on a developed lot. So I would at least want to bring that up, that the taxes that they paid were probably a lot lower than what I've been paying for 26 years on developed houses. And again, you're paying for the traffic. I think we are really talking about roads. If you look at where it is, it's roads. And you're another family here. That is kind of the name of the game. And then again, when you said paying another $10 per square foot, I just want to bring up, it's an extra $6. So I just want to make sure we're talking the same numbers.
If it's passed, it's $9.37 if we pass the full.
Recommended amount.
It's $3.21 right now.
Correct. Julie is, and regarding the vacant residential lot, I've had conversation with several folks, one of which, a nice gentleman in New Jersey, maybe you're watching online, I've spent well over an hour with this very item. Residential lot, he's owned it forever, way before we became a municipality. And the fact that I believe how development fees are based for residential and for commercial is based on the impact once people are living there and the business is up and running. It equates to how many trips, how much wear and tear on the roads, how much more volume is needed. Do you need to widen the road now that people have moved in? I explained to him as best I could is that you're paying a development fee or an impact fee once you impact the community, once you start using the roads. Your lot is vacant currently. In communities, I've talked to other folks in other parts of the country, there's fees charged to developers and not to builders. In Fountain Hills, we don't charge an impact or a development fee until the actual development takes place, or further until a builder builds something and somebody soon moves in, because we're basing our fees off of the impact of that new resident and the driving they do and the amount of, that traffic signal that might be needed. All those things are rolled into our capital improvement plan, and you have to figure out a way to pay for it. And this is a blend that Red Oak did for us based on national standards to equate how much do you charge people moving in and how much do you charge people that have been using it for a long period of time to pay for capital items that we've been paying for years. But Julie, I was going to ask, can you explain the impact, particularly on a residential lot that's, say somebody chooses next year to build on, why is that, how is that fee equated, or how can you explain that situation?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, you are correct. The reason it is called impact fee is because there is an impact from every new home that's built. And the philosophy with impact fees is that growth pays for itself. So when a family moves in, there's the increased traffic, but there's also the increased demand on our parks, on our police, on our fire, on all our governmental services. The way the fees are calculated are based on two things. One thing is our level of service. We have adopted a certain level of service that we would like to maintain. The way to maintain that through growth is through development fees. If we don't maintain that level of service, or we don't pay attention to those capital projects that maintain that level of service, then the level of service will drop because we don't have the money to do that. So you are correct, Mayor, that's the philosophy with impact or development fees, that every additional home creates the impact on the community, and that if growth is going to pay for itself, this is what the cost of that is.
Well, let's move it to downtown and a commercial property. We've got a new development going in that's going to cause quite a bit more traffic, potentially a street light that's needed to be paid for, maybe some improvements or, a turning lane, capital items that are needed because of this new development or growth. How would that be paid for?
Again, because the way commercial development fees are calculated, it is based on traffic counts, the number of cars. A residence, for example, brings in 2.5 people, and that, 2 cars come in twice a day. A commercial business may bring in 50 cars a day. So there's a significantly more impact on the community and on the infrastructure from commercial development as opposed to residential development.
If you don't have an impact fee, or if your impact fee is too low in a commercial area where you want to have nice development and support the infrastructure for businesses that are currently there so that you don't have congestion in roads or an area that people just don't want to visit because the infrastructure is not maintained or been improved enough to handle the traffic, where do you get that money?
Mayor, again, without impact fees or with too low impact fees, you either cut your level of service or you cut your capital projects that you intended to do because you don't have the money, or you find an alternative funding source, either through a general obligation bond or property tax or some other way to pay for that infrastructure if you want to maintain that level of service.
So if you were to do a general obligation bond to improve a road area that's required because of new development in a downtown area, therefore you'd be taxing the entire population across their valuation of their property rather than utilizing a model such as Red Oak did, where you're taxing a proportional amount to the new development that's causing the impact with growth, and then also to the maintenance item that goes across the general population, right?
That's correct, Mayor. The entire community would be paying for that improvement in that growth area, yes.
I think what we're challenged with a lot now is we want to incent development downtown. We want to have our vision come to life sooner than later. So we need to find that balance that's going to help us to pay for potential street improvements because of development growth, and in our capital budget there is no money, and we've reduced it dramatically year over year, and we will have to do so further. We won't have the money to pay for the infrastructure to support the new businesses, which is obviously not what we want to have. We want to have a quality community that can support the additional traffic and ultimately the vibrancy of a downtown. What would have commercial or development fees paid for off the top of your head recently? What are some of the improvements we have benefited from that we may not have had we not had development fees?
Mayor, development fees have paid for a portion of the Desert Vista Park. They've also paid for the parking facility at the Botanical Gardens that was paid for with development fees. The traffic signal on Palisades and Sunridge was paid for with development fees.
I don't like that one, by the way.
Sidewalk in the park? No, that wasn't.
Off the top of my head, that's...
Generally, the development fees are to pay for items related to growth as well as just capital improvement infrastructure programs. So that's what we have to come up with, is a balance. We can't say we can't have development fees because then we're not going to have quality infrastructure to support our beautiful vision, some of which is on public property, which may require capital dollars from our town if we were to consider making investments in that area. Would those dollars come from development fees, potentially, capital items that the town could choose to spend within its park property? Could development fee dollars be used? I'm sorry, I didn't ask you this one. The other questions I laid up to you earlier tonight, let you know I was going to ask, but I just thought of this one. If we're to make capital investments in our park property, similar to what's seen in the vision to some degree, could dollars from development fees be utilized for those?
Mayor, that would depend on whether it was determined that the projects that you're going to pay for were the result of growth. And typically when you go through your capital projects, the question they ask is, if you were not going to add one more person to the population, would you do this project anyway? And if you would do it anyway, then you can't pay for that with growth money. So it's only a project that is being done because of the additional population.
I could see things such as parking because of increased areas. Andrew, do you think that generally might be an area that could be apportioned to growth capital development fee dollars or impact fee dollars to be utilized to handle additional parking due to additional needs or additional growth?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, it certainly is the type of capital project that could be included. Keep in mind, it's always a legislative decision of this council in preparing your infrastructure improvements plan on what you believe is growth related and what isn't. All of the capital projects in town are going to be in that plan, and it is only then after it's determined that that's a capital project that the council deems as a priority do we determine how much of it is growth related and how much isn't. So you may have a project like the downtown visioning, street improvements in your capital plan, and you may have allocated 12% or 18% or 20%, whatever the number is, to new growth. That calculation would then be used to form the development fee that would be charged. Incidentally, that leads back to the quandary that we as the people who have to spend the time at the legislature dealing with this issue find ourselves in all the time. That development fees are mainly used as a reimbursement tool for the developers who build large pieces of infrastructure. For instance, in the town it wouldn't be germane to have a water treatment plant or a sewer treatment plant, but those are typical items that are reimbursed. The town, we have items that we know will be reimbursed as construction projects by developers, as in the park in the Elman project. That is, a portion of that would be reimbursed through development fees charged as they came in, so that it has been used over the past decade at least as the primary tool to encourage large developments to happen, knowing that they have a mechanism for at least partial reimbursement. So part of what we're talking about down here, if it were put into the IIP, could be reimbursed by a developer who would come and make those improvements themselves. Probably not 100%, but at least a part of it.
I just think in general, improvements to infrastructure to sustain us, particularly to support the development we'd like to see, there will be capital dollars needed to beef up our infrastructure, and we need dollars to be able to do that. Our capital improvement, our budget is what now as far as budget, $9 million in our total CIP fund?
Yes, Mayor.
And so, and we've spent, I don't know what over the last couple of years how many dollars we've spent, but significant millions of dollars. In prior years, we've ratcheted down significantly to maybe $2 million over the next few years, but that $2 million doesn't pay for, or $2.5 million doesn't pay for a great deal. Our CIP budget will be certainly larger in this year and next because of some stimulus dollars coming in, but we need to have dollars come in order to sustain our infrastructure. So glancing through Chamber of Commerce letter, I can see they're not saying don't increase fees. They're saying to be reasonable, and I think that's what we're all looking to do, is to, again, do that balancing act here. We have a unique funding for our community, as was put together by that table, I think that Councilmember Brown requested from you, Julie, that has the table here. It was very helpful to look at our areas that we compared with. Cities such as Avondale is one where they have water, sewer, fire, and police. They have a Y in those columns there. What does that indicate, Julie, on those? That they have funding to support those through independent means?
Mayor, actually what the question was, did they have a police department? Did they have a fire department?
Okay.
And so those answers are yes.
Their own, okay. In Fountain Hills, water, sewer, fire, police are all no, because they're contracted. Is that why those would be?
That's correct.
Okay. Yes.
To provide a little bit more clarity to that, your question actually reached beyond the scope of that, but hit on something that is true. Avondale does have a dedicated sales tax to police and fire on one hand, and to water and sewer infrastructure on another.
Sales tax?
So a portion of their sales tax is dedicated to those two items. I believe that the total together make up $0.005.
Okay. What the table points out is Fountain Hills sales tax is at $2.60 compared to Carefree at $3. Carefree is similar to us, where they do not have their own water, sewer, fire, or police. According to this chart, Carefree also does not have a primary or secondary property tax. Fountain Hills has no primary property tax and a small secondary property tax. We have a lower sales tax. They have a higher sales tax. So those two communities, our community, Carefree, seem to be very, as far as municipal taxing, quite low and probably quite reliant upon sales tax. According to this, since property tax is virtually non-existent from those two communities, of course, sanitary districts and school districts, you pay through your county property tax, but the funding doesn't come to Fountain Hills. Mesa has all those services. They have a low sales tax and they have no primary property tax and a low secondary property tax. They're obviously struggling also. And there are other communities that are all over the board according to this chart, but I thought it was interesting to compare what services are supported by municipal dollars and how it's paid for. Most of the cities, such as Queen Creek, has a very high primary property tax and no secondary, and they have a pretty moderate, or quite maybe higher than moderate sales tax. So they're all challenged with how to fund and have a sustainable funding model. And as was mentioned in the Chamber's letter, development fees are one-time fees, nothing to really sustain yourself for, but you try to have growth pay for growth. And if you don't have a development fee to fund a road that's needed to support a new development, then you don't have the money to build that road. So it's something we have to take seriously, but we don't want to be we don't have the perception. We need to stay away from the perception that we're not development friendly, because we are all excited about the vision, which we'll get to very shortly. But I'm certain that we'll remain very competitive with our neighbors. I'm sure most of us will keep our fees lower than our neighbors to be competitive, with an eye on making sure we maintain our infrastructure. And looking back, these capital improvement investments that have been funded through development fees are investments and improvements that we wouldn't want to not have for the most part. So it does cost money, and you need to find the funding somewhere to maintain your community's quality of life. And this is just one part of the funding mechanism. Any other questions? Councilmember Hanson.
I'll try and remember. I think I might have forgotten, but there's a sentence in the staff report, and it says the majority of the increases, which is 85%, is due to the maintenance costs related to the pavement management study completed by Stantec. And another way to look at this is that we've spent years wearing down our streets, and in essence now we're saying to new development, we want you to help us take care of our streets that we've been wearing down over the years. And I think we get bogged down, at least some of the discussion, is the cost of development, and we forget to talk about the benefits of development and growth. And for new businesses coming in, look at the Bashes redevelopment. As part of those improvements, they put in turn lanes, they made improvements to the property. So not only do they pay impact fees, then they're paying for additional improvements that are part of a development agreement. I knew I should have written them down. If we did a project like Swirl, and we did a bond issue, we'd have new businesses that would be paying additional property taxes as well as the impact fees that they paid. So it's almost like they're getting taxed twice. So I think we'd just like to keep in mind that, when new businesses come, they're bringing more, hopefully, sales tax dollars. They're bringing more people to the town. Those are all pluses. New residents moving in, they're going to be a benefit to our town too. So the idea of growth having to pay for itself, let's keep in mind the benefits of the new people and the new businesses that are coming to town. And we already have these fees, and I really like seeing us lower down on that chart than where we would be with all of these increases almost to the top.
Very good. Julie, can you speak to that? I talked to you a little bit about that, was for things such as Bashes. Let's say that they went ahead and made let's say Bashes was a new development. And in our development fees calculated a year prior were X amount of dollars. How do the improvements that they made to talk to this potential double taxing, how is that calculated or affected in a capital improvement plan or in the development fees? How does that work its way out?
Hopefully I can try to answer that question. If it's a redevelopment, for example, for Bashes, redevelopment doesn't typically pay
I was thinking
impact fees because they've already paid them unless there's an increase in square footage. But it comes down to the level of service. When we talk about, for example, paving Saguaro Boulevard, we have an assumption right now of a level of service for 25,000 people. That's the level of service based on the traffic that we have. So as we get new businesses with more traffic, if we don't increase the level of, or maintain the level of service, it will go down if we don't do the infrastructure that is the result of the growth. So it's really based on the level of service that we as a community want to maintain, because each additional business or residence puts an increased demand on our services.
Okay, if for an example, if Bashes was brand new and they funded some of these improvements just off-site improvements, how is that usually worked out, either through a development agreement or a reflection upon the impact fees?
Mayor, as Andrew McGuire said, they would typically get a credit.
There wouldn't be
Mr. Mayor, the key is to remember that only infrastructure in the infrastructure improvements plan is eligible for credit. So, for instance, if a brand new developer came in and built the typical curb gutter street sidewalk, deceleration lanes, bus bays, and all of those things that you would have with a commercial development, but none of those were included in the impact fee calculation, there'd be no creditable item. But if there were additional things done, like say it was along a major arterial roadway, our typical development requirements are the outside lane, the curb gutter and sidewalk, but if it were a 6-lane road, for instance, the 2 inside lanes may not be something the town would typically ask for. However, it might be part of a development fee. Now, we don't have any roads that big here, but if there were a piece of infrastructure that were included in the fee calculation, they would be eligible for reimbursement for the things that they constructed that were part of the fee. But typical on-site or near-site related items are typically not in our capital plan.
So, for an example, that Councilmember Hanson brought, Bash's de-acceleration lane, that sort of thing, was probably not in our capital improvement plan, so would not have been included if they were a new development. I mean,
correct.
In a impact fee, so they paid for that through their, because that was something that was required from the town in their development.
Right.
So they may have been required by the town, but it wasn't in their impact fee.
Yeah, what it's important to remember the difference is what we typically call development exaction, which is the impact that your development is going to have from a certain area immediately surrounding it. And that's when we talk about the, the rough proportionality and the nexus that you have to have when we are talking about exactions, some tied directly to the property. A development fee being paid by a particular property may be funding a piece of infrastructure that's not right in front of the building. It may be half a mile away, it may be 2 miles away, but they're paying their portion based upon their impact on that service in general. Sometimes there will be a piece of infrastructure that's in the plan that's adjacent and built at the same time that will be creditable. And that's like I told you, we've been in the middle of what I feel like is a tug of war at the legislature. We have developers on one side telling us we want the fee to include as much of our infrastructure as absolutely possible. And on the other side, we have the builders saying, don't raise the fees. And it's been a tug of war that the municipalities are in the middle of, because without the fees generated for the infrastructure that's in the plan, the developers can't build the infrastructure and can't be reimbursed.
I think that's something the public, generally outside of commercial areas, residential primarily, developers aren't necessarily against impact fees because they are generally used for capital improvement projects that benefit a developer, but it's paid for by a builder, which is typically flow-through cost to the ultimate purchaser.
That's
in the residential environment. But commercially, it's typically one and the same. The developer may often be the builder as well.
Yeah, and so the incentive in that case is to be on the front end of your project to ensure that your project is in the IIP, the Infrastructure Improvements Plan. And that's primarily the reason over the past few years that the development community has asked for the tweaks to the development fee statute. And the cities and towns have been agreeable to it, particularly to allow for infrastructure of the same type to be substituted into the plan, one for the other, so that if the priorities change in a development environment and something comes along for downtown, the council has the ability to shift the projects to make the projects happen in front of that development so that that developer can be reimbursed for the project it's doing. So it's a bit of a dance in terms of trying to ensure that there's money there to be able to reimburse someone who has the capability of building the big project without raising those fees so high that the builders in other areas are not scared away by it. So it is.
Speaking of the legislature, can you speak to why the heck would we want to consider a fee increase when there's a moratorium against collecting anything higher than what we have today?
Mayor, members of the council, I can't tell you why the heck you would want to do something because only the 7 of you can tell you why the heck you might want to do that. However, I can tell you that there is a legislative intent behind the moratorium that the fees are not increased during the next 2-year period. The town right now is invested in the study around $60,000, so that you have a fee study that's current as of now that you've invested the funds in. Were you to wait until the end of the moratorium period to conduct your fees or to implement your fees, you would need to go back and refresh that study at the very least or reconduct the study. So you're going to spend more money on your study to bring it current to that time period. If in the interim period you have fees, you have the moratorium lifted either by a lawsuit, by the legislature deciding that 1 year is enough or deciding that they're going in a different direction, any of those things that could happen in between would have left then a gap in your development fees that you'd have to restart the clock on. So what I suggest is that if there's a desire to move forward and implement fees now, that you choose a delayed effective date, of course, until after the moratorium period to meet the legislative intent, so that you're not increasing the fees during that 2-year period, with the caveat that if the legislature decides the moratorium period is going to go away earlier or it goes away by court order, that you can implement them at a different date, whatever the council decides it may be. It's not uncommon for fees to be stepped in or phased in. We see it in all kinds of different communities. I think this is a phase-in period. The other thing to keep in mind, though, is that part of the budget bill, another non-budgetary impact item that's probably going to be challenged, are the amendments to the development fee statute that were under negotiation between the development community and the cities and towns when the legislative session was still going, prior to the special session. That all sat and was never implemented in the bill that it was in, but the language from that bill was transplanted into the budget bill. So there are actually amendments to the development fee statute that take effect at the end of this year that you're going to miss on those if your fees, if for some reason, for instance, if you adopted your fees at whatever level you choose now, 75 days from the day of adoption, they would be implemented, or they'd be able to be implemented. If the moratorium were challenged and tossed before that time, your fees would be effective prior to the end of this year when the other changes to the development fee statute take effect. And just for a very, very brief summary, those changes are basically grandfathering provisions to freeze fees for 2 years after a final approval on a residential, it's a final subdivision plat, and on a commercial property, it's the final site plan approval. So that 2-year phase-in, that grandfathering period, was already negotiated and agreed to by the cities and towns. That'll be in place as of the end of this year. So there is it's an overlap between the moratorium and that provision, that if the moratorium weren't there, that provision still kicks in at the end of the year. So it's a bit of a cat and mouse game in terms of when projects would come in, but the entire provision was intended to provide certainty for a window of time. So particularly that a commercial developer coming in to get financing to build a building would have a window in which they knew their fees couldn't increase, because it was a very reasonable request of the commercial building community that they were going out, getting their lending, getting the project underway, and then fees would increase, and they didn't have it in their loan. And they were having to modify their loans and do a number of things just to finish their project. So it made sense to have this freeze period, and that will be implemented regardless of the moratorium on January 1 of 2010. So there are a few different things at play that aren't just related to the moratorium, and the moratorium itself is likely to be challenged.
Appreciate it. Speak to the other thing that Councilmember Hansen brought up very briefly, but 3 great points. One of which that we haven't talked about, but I think we all have in our mind, is that you want to have development because ultimately when everything's built out, we're going to need a good economic engine to fund our quality of life here in Fountain Hills. So we need good development in Fountain Hills. We need sales taxes. We need people to be here. We'd like them to be here sooner than later. So if you have a fee that's too high, you may cause that to be delayed. So I think that's obviously very important. And we want to have great development in Fountain Hills that helps us to be a sustainable community as far as the financial base of it. Also, Mr. Dorman spoke and brought up a petition that many folks signed that they request to have no increase in development fees. But what Mr. Dorman brought up might be good for us to have as council members is he had a couple of examples of buildings that were built recently and what the effect would be on them with the new impact fees, and they seem quite a bit different than what Councilmember Archambault or Vice Mayor Archambault shared. So that might be interesting for us to have at our next meeting or before our next meeting when we make a decision on where to place these fees at as well. So appreciate that work that Mr. Dorman did once again and the feedback from the residents. Any other comments on development fees? Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. One of the things that was brought up was existing residents living here wearing down the streets. And if you've owned a piece of property here for a while, you've been paying property taxes, why should you have to pay for development fees when you move in? If I go back to 1978, when I built my first property, we were paying road district bonds, we were paying sanitary district bonds because we had to build a sanitary plant. And so the citizens that have been here for a while have been paying for the infrastructure that drives the economic engine that draws new residences here. Certainly we wear down the streets, but we paid for those streets. The developer didn't want to pay for those streets. He wanted to put the streets, just the streets in that he wanted, and then we voted on a road district so that we could finish paving the streets that were dirt. We had quite a few of them at the time. Same thing with sanitary district. You know, they built the initial plant, but then we voted on a district so that we could run sewer taps to all the different streets that weren't paved, the difficult lots. Every sewer tap was put in until the district got a little further along. And then as new subdivisions were opened up, they decided, well, we'll put the taps in as we need them. But irregardless, the point is that the infrastructure that was each set of residents, as you moved to this town, you paid for the infrastructure that was required, whether it was through a property tax or it was a tap fee or it was a water meter fee or whatever. It was what you built that draws the current residents to this town. So, I mean, you know, we didn't put up streetlights, but we also didn't put sidewalks in, which was, I always thought that back in '72, that was a huge mistake. But then I've got a brother that's blind and he uses the cane and the sidewalks to get around. So I saw it in a different light than most other people. But in our development fees, we got millions of dollars in there for sidewalk improvements so that we can get our kids safely back and forth to schools. So we have interconnecting walks for the residents to get down to the parks or walk around a project like that, you know, if that comes to fruition. So it's a buy-in process to the citizens that are moving here now. We're not asking them to maintain our streets. We're asking them to pay for the buy-in because your impact may have an impact on a specific traffic light. You know, last night one of the things that we got into was the Elman property, and everybody kept saying the Elman property is driving this thing. Well, Dennis and I knew better than that because what it is exactly what we were talking about. Development pays for development. Impact should pay for impact. Elman's going to put all the streets in. He's going to put all the sewer lines in. He's going to put all the water lines in. He's going to put all the infrastructure in that he has to put in. That's his responsibility. But the difference, the cost of that is going to go into the cost of those lots. But what we're talking about now is the impact of a resident moving here and the vehicle miles traveled and how they're having an impact on our streets. Well, because most of the infrastructure is here in town already, the thing that's driving this and what we're seeing is streets. That's the one variable. That's the one thing that keeps moving around. Now, unfortunately, it's truly it's a balancing act and double-edged sword. You know, do we keep residential fees low and balance the infrastructure requirements on the backs of the town's revenues or on the citizens? You know, do we keep commercial fees low and accept increased traffic burden on our streets? The path we have taken in the past, obviously, and it should be obvious to everybody here, is unsustainable. We have given too much away on the hope of development, and development has never happened. Right now, we had from 2001 to 2006, the development fee was, for commercial, was 51 cents a square foot. I didn't see a huge rush in here. From 2006 to now, it's $3.21 a square foot. Still no huge rush, but we have the availability to negotiate in development agreements for large developments like that, or a large developer comes along like we worked out with George. We did everything in our power. This council was tripping over itself to try to help George get that development off the ground. The only thing we can't do is hand him the money. You know, so there's negotiations that happen, and the development fees become a negotiating tool. The town's revenues are not a coffer for which everyone can dip in a hand. The town's revenues are for the service of the stakeholders, not outside interests. It's important and even immoral to continue to balance the higher demand of infrastructure on the town's coffers. This is unsustainable and unacceptable. So everybody's going to come to their own conclusion, but what I'd like to just reiterate is that we built this town, and I can say that because I was here, so that it would be desirable enough for everybody else to move here. And basically, the way I look at the development fees, and I don't know what level we're going to come to, but I look at development fees as a buy-in. And if you're going to have an impact on the infrastructure, we have to collect the money. If we don't, we're going to reduce the level of service. If we reduce the level of service, you can just watch an exodus happen. Thank you.
Thanks, Vice Mayor. The other item that Cassie, Councilmember Hanson brought up is the 85% due to maintenance, the pavement management analysis that was done. It says here the majority of the increase, 85%, is due to the maintenance costs related to the pavement management study completed by Stantec. That 85% increase, obviously when we look at the increase, it's primarily in the pavement area, but it says maintenance cost, not growth. Can you speak to what that means?
Yes, Mayor, and I will clarify that. It did say maintenance. Basically, the Stantec report, when it came out, assigned a cost to what we needed for the streets, for the infrastructure, to bring them to a certain standard level. But that cost then gets transferred to the projects that are growth related. So in other words, the cost of what Stantec determined was the maintenance, but then you take that cost and apply it to the projects that are on our capital improvement plan that are growth related, that caused those projects to increase in cost. So it's not for the maintenance. It's just that study, that Stantec maintenance study, told us what the true cost was to build a road or build an intersection, and so those costs then were translated back into the capital projects.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Dickey?
Just a question for clarification. Did the Bashas redevelopment have to pay impact fees? Because we were kind of using it as an example.
Right, no, it didn't. It didn't, and
I just want to be clear, because we're talking about that they put something in.
not
or-
redevelopment.
Right.
Like that,
Bashas, like any development, they would only have paid development fees, and they did pay development fees for that increase in square footage.
There you go, okay. Okay, yeah, because they made their store larger. Good. Any other?
As did Paul's.
As Paul's, yep. Which is very nice, by the way. All right. Thank you very much for that lengthy discussion on development fees. Thanks for the input from the public as well.
Mr. Mayor, real quick.
Yes.
In terms of preparing an ordinance for you for next week, how would you like us to physically do it? Do you want it to be alternate versions? Do you want it to just have blanks in it? How would you like? We can probably bring it forward as it is right now and amend it on site. I just want to know that in terms of implementation, how do you want us to address it?
On the cover page of the staff report, it has broken out by current and proposed by the 4 different uses. If we were to be able at our next meeting to agree to what the new development fees would be for each of those 4 uses, if that's ultimately where we need to go, then I just think 4 blanks in those areas in language, and we will come to those numbers up here at our next meeting. Is that enough of a breakdown they needed? Because I know it's broken down in other areas, but ultimately it comes down to the cost per square foot for the commercial and industrial and multifamily and residential is by unit. Are those the breakdowns that we're going to need?
Mr. Mayor, it's a little more refined than that, but we'll just bring the exhibit without any numbers in it, and we'll have you fill them in that night.
Does that sound good, Council?
Works for me.
And we'll also prepare then the language so you can see what implementation now with delayed till 2011 potential levying would be, so that you can see how that language works as well.
All right. Thank you. Thank you again, Julie. Next item, item 11, consideration of approving the downtown Fountain Hills Vision Plan with possible direction to staff to to process the downtown vision plan as an area-specific plan in conjunction with the general plan amendment process. Welcome, Bob.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. The Downtown Vision Plan is a result of a process started by the Business Vitality Advisory Council of the Fountain Hills Chamber of Commerce. In December 2008, a group of citizens and business owners worked with the Chamber to engage Swaback Partners to undertake a visionary process and evaluate the downtown core area in order to better align it with its future development potential. The Town Council joined with the Chamber in supporting the visioning process, and the process became an excellent example of a public-private effort. The process was guided by 4 themes and objectives. First, an acknowledgement that the vitality of the town with respect to its tax structure required that it reach out to a market beyond our own residential base. Second, the places we like to visit most are those that are working well for the people who call those places home. Third, the visioning process would be open, accountable, and have many milestones along the way, but no finish line. And last, the plan was to facilitate, guide, and provoke. The results and effectiveness were to be entirely dependent on the enthusiasm and long-term commitment of the citizens of the town. This final Downtown Vision Plan is a process of months of research, staff reviews, town council's reviews, and focus group observations. The plan was presented to the citizens through open public forums in which the participants asked questions and provided opinions, advice, and insight. We analyzed the strengths and the weaknesses of the current downtown. We looked at the traffic, both vehicular and pedestrian, both existing and expected, and we looked at parking, both existing and expected. Realizing that people rarely like to walk more than 1,000 feet from their parked car, we looked at the walking distances to points throughout the downtown in relation to the parking area locations. The result of this process is a Downtown Vision Plan, which contemplates 9 separate districts. Those districts are the Business District. Show them all to you here. The Business District is the blue. The Avenue District. The South End District. The Residential District. The West Side District. Civic District. The Service District. The Lakeside District, and the Park District. Each district has a unique character of its own, but each district will also blend with the other districts to form a cohesive downtown theme. I'll briefly run through those. The Business District is somewhat U-shaped, starting mid-block between the Avenue of the Fountains and Parkview Drive. The district extends beyond Palisades Boulevard, wrapping around Verde River Drive between La Montana and Saguaro. This will be the center of the downtown commerce, promoting entrepreneurship through commerce and related and commercial businesses. This is an artist's rendering of a possible development scenario in that business district. The Avenue District encompasses not only the Avenue of the Fountains, but also the northern portion of Verde River Drive. This will be the downtown core. With the comfortable atmosphere for shopping and strolling, it will become a shopping destination and a must-visit magnet for visitors. This is the artist's rendering of one possible scenario for the Avenue District, and this is the Avenue of the Fountains and Saguaro Boulevard intersection. The South End District lies between the Avenue of the Fountains and El Lago Boulevard, and from Saguaro Boulevard to just west of Verde River Drive. The South End District is envisioned as a mixed-use downtown residential district complemented by small shops and offices. This district is also proposed to contain a village square that will provide a prominent downtown park. And this is an artist's rendering of that possible development scenario in the South End District, showing the residential, mixed use, and then the little downtown park. The residential district is on the west side of La Montana Boulevard, or Drive, which is right across the street. This district has already been developed with condominiums, and this residential district provides the population base for the downtown area. The West Side District is the vacant area between Avenue of the Fountains and Palisades Boulevard that wraps around behind Bash's Shopping Plaza along Westby Drive. This district will be a true mixed-use district. It contains one of the potential locations for a large entertainment anchor such as the theater. The Civic District is the current location of the municipal buildings, and it's also a possible location for future community resources such as a community pool or other amenities. The Service District was already developed as the Bash's Plaza, located on the corner of La Montana and Palisades, and is an important component in the business community. We hope to continue to see this district provide high-quality, community-oriented retail and service. The Lakeside District is the portion of Fountain Park directly east of Saguaro Boulevard, and this area could see the most dynamic changes with an emphasis on amenities, public open space, and potential performance venue. Small retail, restaurants, and specialty shops are also potential uses for this area. And this is an artist's rendering of one possible development scenario in the Lakeside District. This shows the performance venue, the terraced seating area and gardens, the shops, and some large lawn areas.
Just adding a little levity to the evening.
That's awesome. Being heckled.
You're being heckled.
The Park District contains the remainder of the Fountain Park. More amenities such as trees, lights, and additional park furniture are all possibilities in this district. In addition to adding more trees to the park, the Downtown Vision Plan encourages a general sprucing up or greening of the vacant areas throughout the downtown area. Cleaning up and temporarily planting trees and shrubs will help enhance the downtown experience and lessen the visual impacts of vacant lots. The Vision Plan also has numerous recommendations for streetscape enhancements throughout the downtown area, again with the idea of improving the overall appearance and creating a more comfortable atmosphere for people walking in the area. To summarize, the Downtown Vision Plan has been designed to be flexible and proactive. The Vision Plan will create a vibrant and successful downtown. It will have 9 distinct yet integrated districts. It will help in targeting specific development for specific locations. It will act as a guide for future developers who want to see where the town would like to go and what we would like to see. The plan will assist the creation of marketing and outreach materials and strategies. The Vision Plan will help create an attractive atmosphere for businesses and customers, and it will enhance the residents' quality of life and attract new visitors. Staff recommends that the Town Council approve the Downtown Vision Plan. We also recommend that the Council direct staff to process the approved Downtown Vision Plan as an area-specific plan in conjunction with the general plan update. And that concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you very much, Bob. Let me ask if there's anyone from the public on this,
No, sir.
since we're a little late, make sure they get in. Okay, thank you. All right, let's start with some questions or dialogue from council to staff. Questions? I think we're pretty well engaged and marching down the road here, but Councilmember Brown?
Just one quick question. Being area specific, how difficult will it be if a developer comes in and buys a portion of this up, actually utilizes the plan, but wants to alter it just slightly? How difficult will it be for a developer to do that?
They'll go through a similar process to any other development in which they'll go through the concept plan review, and if there's a rezoning or any other types of actions that would have to come before council. The main thing with an area-specific plan or this plan is if the council determines that whatever is being proposed meets the guidelines, then the council could approve it.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. Bob, how does this lend itself to a private-public partnership when you get down into the park area? Is that a possibility where the town could do a public-private partnership with a developer since we own the land?
It's my understanding that the town could. There would have to be some sort of a public access allowance And there are some criteria, and I'm not fully up on what all those would be.
Just
But yes.
Looking at Andrew's name
just a
over
few
here.
things to be careful about there, but we're not going to let it hamstring us completely.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Vice Mayor, I think that before we could answer that question with any kind of certainty, we're going to have to get a much better handle on the conveyance to the town of those properties. And we don't right now have the documents to be able to give you any firm answer, and it appears that it's going to be difficult to unearth them. So when we do know for sure, we'll tell you what ability we have, what constraints the property may have come to us under. And I can't tell you until I see them for sure, and I've asked for them and have not yet seen them.
Well, we wouldn't be actually conveying the property to a developer, we'd be joint.
Well, there might actually be a restriction on use in the conveyance.
Oh, I see.
And we want to be certain that we're clear on any of those. But until we get a firm look at those, I can't.
So that would be something that we'd have to start a motion on, get looking into the statute, see what's possible, that kind of stuff.
Well, and keep in mind that the grantor is still in the community. You know,
And from discussions, obviously,
Okay, so it'd be something maybe you'd have to go to the vote of the people.
Again,
Okay.
haven't even seen the document.
Talk about two different-
When I get the document as requested, I'll be happy to tell
two
you.
different things related to the vision and moving forward with the different uses in the Fountain Park in particular. The parties have been involved and the discussions are all in favor of generally doing the same type of work, and that party can change any deed restrictions, or lack of a better term, if desired. I've understood from just being told that there are no restrictions to that effect, so hopefully we can get what you need to make that opinion quickly.
We'd love to have
Okay.
it.
I don't think we have issues. We need to continue to think outside the box and
Thank you, Mayor.
come up with things. Thanks, Vice Mayor. I want to just, we've been through a long process, and I want to just thank all the residents and all the chamber, of course, for getting the ball rolling and partnering with us. Just another great example of all of us working together to leverage our strengths, working hard for 6 months, hiring a great team, the Swaback Partners out of Scottsdale, and John Bernard, a local resident here, putting his heart and soul into this project for over 6 months. Great opportunity to hire a firm at a slow time in the development world. Made it available for us to have a world-class organization help guide us through a very important and sensitive process. Very creative force that firm brought, and talented artist Powell put all these drawings together. We went about 6 months, obviously had great public input, as Bob mentioned. The process we'll follow here again is to adopt this hopefully here tonight, move into the area-specific planning, and fold it into the general plan that we're going through. All great timing, coming together at the right point in time when we're through with all this. The economy is going to be turned around, and this will be happening in probably just a couple of months, right? No, this is definitely a long process. And some people point out things through the public process and through emails and editorials that they can't envision this one part or can't envision another part. And just remind us that this is a flexible plan, as you mentioned, Bob. There's places for movie theaters here, there's place over there. It's just more of a theme. It's a vision that helps encapsulate a lot of the uses and also addresses the scale of our downtown that was originally developed for over 75,000 residents. We have a large downtown area. So the Lakeside District, all these districts help us to put uses potentially to those areas that would help that area to thrive. So we have gaps in our downtown in this vision plan, and the planning here helps to look at those gaps today as opportunities for tomorrow. But the vision itself may seem unreal to some, but then, as I mentioned during the visioning process, you got to look back to Fountain Hills in the 1960s and a developer purchasing some land from a cattle ranch and envisioning putting a 560-foot fountain out in the middle of nowhere. And that seemed like a crazy plan, I'm sure, at the time, but that sure worked very well. And this needs to be looked at in the same light. This, I don't think, is that extreme of a plan. This is something that we've all been able to get our arms around pretty well. But I'm glad we've got Lori Geary on board, glad the Chamber, BVAC, and so many residents are engaged in this process, because it's going to take us a long time. What's important now is that we keep this project alive. This is not hitting the shelves. We're going to keep energy behind this. We talked about the process that we're going through legally to allow this to come to fruition. We talked about some important components through the process, one of which is linking the park to our downtown. Currently, there's quite a gap. The Fountain Plaza Fountain side, and our Avenue of the Fountain. Obviously, there's a big gap there, so some items to consider have been brought up to link those things together. Of course, our favorite intersection, Avenue of the Fountains and Saguaro Boulevard, could be improved perhaps further than just stop signs and large areas for people to walk by nothing. And looking at greening up downtown, greening up the Fountain Park and the tree program. Great things that we're going to get our legs under us and move forward on. And as I mentioned, it's flexible. Other things we're working on or are going to be working towards is funding. Are there federal dollars? Are there state dollars? Where are dollars available to help us move this forward? But ultimately, I think this vision plan is going to be something that we will be able to bring to the marketplace to help a developer find some real value in this. Developers, from what in my discussions have said, they don't really want to spend much energy on projects that they don't feel politically there's much hope in, or that they have to put a lot of time behind. This vision helps them to understand where the town wants to go, and if their vision meets our vision, which is probably quite likely, they're going to be empowered to spend some money and to make an investment in our community, and that's what I think ultimately this gives us this is a tool for our Economic Development Administrator, the Chamber of Commerce, the property owners that own all of downtown, which we don't own. It gives them the opportunity to probably add quite a bit of value to their property through this holistic vision that we have. Obviously, it's a high level. As I mentioned, it's flexible. But speaking of timing, this is not obviously going to happen overnight. We're in quite a bad economic time frame, but a great time to do this planning to be prepared to come out of it. It's certainly not a sprint. It's been 35 plus years now, and we certainly have gaps there. It's a room to improve, but a holistic plan will help us to get there with cooperation and collaboration all the way. As it was said before, one person can run quickly, two people can run far, so it's going to take a lot of cooperation and collaboration amongst all of us to stay tightly together, and it's more of a marathon than a sprint for sure. Or an ultra marathon. We're going to need people all along the way handing out water and oranges, and just to keep this going. But I think we've got a lot of momentum right now, and I think it's a tremendous high-quality plan that's going to be warmly welcomed in the development world when there's dollars to be invested. We're ready to go. So I'm very proud of where we're at, and look at this point for someone to make a motion.
So moved.
All right. Second, Henry? Second. Councilmember Leger, second. Very good. Any other discussion? Councilmember Dickey?
Where are we putting Big Ben? I mean, Lake Havasu got the
yeah.
London Bridge, so. You said it was a guideline, and so all those things that you talked about where people said one thing or the other, because I think like the theater might be on top of the chamber building or something like that. So again, we're looking at something that's just a beautiful vision, a complete picture, but all the little windows don't have to be exactly what they say. So, because someone had also written us about lights and roundabouts and things like that, and I don't think anything is definitely off the table, but this is just a great plan, a vision plan. It's a perfect name for it. So, thanks for all the work.
Yep. Yeah. Thank everybody for putting their time and energy and care and concern into this project. All right. We got a motion and a second. Councilmember Hanson.
Real quick. There was one sentence in the staff report that kind of stood out. It just says, not approving the plan will require that the current development patterns and governing ordinances and codes remain as is. And I think that was the one that jumped out, and it goes, yeah, I don't think we want to do that. And I mean, just for everybody at home, staff did a really good job encapsulating and describing the visioning that's taken place over the last 6 months. And I would urge anybody to go online and look at the Cliff Notes version of all the work, because I think you did a really good job.
That's great. And the vision plan, we're going to make sure it gets out to everybody, but it is now on the website, our town website as well, as the chamber has a lot of pieces of this as well. All right, we have a motion second. Any other discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Mayor 7-0.
Thank you very much. Next item, consideration of ordinance 0907, amending Fountain Hills Town Code relating to certain building activities that may negatively impact adjacent property. Peter, welcome.
Hello again. I hope you don't mind to have a 30-minute presentation
Yeah, right.
plan.
Speed it up.
Oh, yeah, and I have buses outside waiting to take you on a field trip. No, this ordinance is to assist me in dealing with abandoned construction sites as a result of the negative economy that we're in right now. And I'm just recommending that you approve, I think it'd be approve the motion to pass this ordinance. I have nothing else to add.
All right, thank you, Peter. Anyone from the public on this item?
No, sir.
Yeah, want to make a motion, council, or you want to have discussion first? How about a motion on it?
Mayor, I move to approve ordinance 09-07 as presented.
Second.
All right, motion and second, discussion, council? Vice Mayor?
Thank you. Peter, could you describe to us some of the different site situations that you might have to address and how you think you can address them?
Well, yeah, there's sites that I need to address, or I'm not sure how we'll handle it yet. We have foundations that are sitting abandoned in Fire Rock, for instance, that have, you know, substantial drop-offs, but the site's fenced, so it's not a problem right now. If the bank or someone decided to, you know, discontinue the rental on the fence, we may have to go back and look at something like that. Most of these are like open trenches, abandoned buildings. I with some certainty think that banks or someone's going to take responsibility and finish these projects someday. The whole intent here was to minimize the impacts on the neighbors until such time as they could be finished.
So, Peter, this is more of a safety issue than it is an eyesore issue. You're not going to have authority to go in and start demanding that the structure get finished, or unless it becomes a safety hazard.
No, not, yeah, you said it exactly right. Yeah. We're not going to worry about how it looks so much as how safe it is. The only thing I'd add to that is, you know, the height of stockpiled fill material dirt. We would address that in this ordinance, and we would also, I got to look here.
Vehicles from
yeah, it was unrelated construction site activity. That was the other thing that we wanted to address.
Abandoned vehicles?
Yeah, vehicles or, you know, storage. Stuff unrelated to the job site being kept at the job site.
Yeah.
17.
So I just wanted to clarify that, Peter, so that people weren't under the misconception that we're going to start going around policing their job sites.
Well, we sort of already do.
Yeah, I know you kind of already do, but I wanted to clarify that we were really, what this ordinance really addresses is safety issues and the risk that it imposes, or the hazard that it imposes on the residents around us.
That's correct.
Thank you, Peter.
All right. Seeing no other questions, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Mayor, 7-0.
Thank you. All right, item 13, consideration resolution 2009-35, approving a joint project agreement with Arizona Department of Transportation relating to the Shea Climbing Lane project. Thanks for hanging around, Randy.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I enjoyed being last. This project is shown on the map in blue. It's basically to construct the westbound lane going up the hill on Shea Boulevard from Fountain Hills to Palisades. It also includes a sidewalk, curb and gutter, drainage, and landscaping, and a bike lane on street. I was thinking about this. I believe that this project is going to be the largest amount of grant funding we've ever put into a single project, and that except for some very small projects where we had 100% grant funding, that this project is going to have the highest percentage of grant funding of any project we've ever done. We actually got 3 grants on this project. The design process is virtually complete, and ADOT's approved the construction documents, and they're now at the Federal Highway Administration for their approval. The way federal aid projects work is that once we've approved the joint project agreement and sent our matching funds to ADOT, they basically handle everything. Our staff will be involved basically as a liaison and for anything that they need to coordinate with the town, citizens, and local entities, but basically ADOT will be handling all the inspection, testing, surveying, and the rest of the project. Council's had previous agenda items on this project, including the selection of the design consultant and review of the town's designation of the town's stimulus funds on this. I would mention that the 3 grants we have on this project total $3.2 million, and the town's minimum local matching funds is $131,000, so like 3% of the project. The town attorney has reviewed the joint project agreement, and he's working out the final details on the final legal verbiage with ADOT, and that's reflected in your agenda item.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor and council members, what is in your packet, or at least what I'm executing over here right now, is the final version. It's an ADOT agreement. It's what ADOT considers a pass-through agreement, even though it's a contractors hired by, managed by, and then project run by ADOT. They consider it pass-through, so we have to eat the worst indemnity provision ever known to man is in this contract, and there's not anything we're going to be able to do about it. It's exactly the same in language as we've negotiated in several other occasions in our projects around for other communities in the state. So it's the best we can do with ADOT, but it still makes us indemnify the state for its own negligence, which I find offensive between governmental entities, but nonetheless, there it is. So the version is complete in your packet.
Thank you. Well, thanks. All right, do we have a motion on this? We do. Do we?
No, we don't.
No. Okay, I'll look for a motion.
Move to approve Resolution 2009-35, approving a joint project agreement with ADOT relating to the Shade Climbing Lane project, Palisades Boulevard to Fountain Hills Boulevard.
Second?
All right, anyone from the public on this item?
No, Mayor.
Any further discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Mayor, 7-0.
Thank you, Randy. Good luck with the project.
Thanks for hanging around.
Item 14, there are no items for council discussion direction to the town manager. Item 15, summary council request and report on recent activities by the town manager. Councilmember Hanson, yes.
Thank you.
Going back to 14?
No, actually, just a little request
Yes.
is that we make sure that we can keep the doors unlocked during open meetings, because we've had a number of times where the public cannot get back in when they leave.
I checked this one, before the meeting. It was open.
It wasn't open when that little cackling happened on my phone.
Oh, so it locked itself afterwards.
Yeah.
Good. Yes, please. Do we know which door that one was tonight? The doors from the outside?
Maybe it's 8 o'clock or something.
Okay, there must be something locking automatically. We need to see to, but I checked earlier. And thank you.
We've actually, Mayor, Council, we've had a group work on that issue, and I haven't found anything systemically wrong right now. We'll re-diagnose that and keep checking. It must be something quirky that is occurring, but certainly not intentional. So.
Thank you. Yeah, that's important. Okay, moving on, summary, council request and report on recent activities by town manager.
I think it's exciting to inform you in light of our new vision plan that Lori has already had quite a bit of success. Her recent trip to an ICSC conference yielded quite a bit of fruit, and there's already 2 development companies that have expressed an interest in visiting our town. And these aren't just retailers; these are major players, and she was able to share with them some of the vision that has already been presented, been adopted here tonight, and got some interest out of that. Also, a number of retailers expressing interest, renewed interest in our town. On October 8th, she's going to be presenting at our first of 2 retreats some information regarding the trade area analysis. And that, she has shown me, shared with me some of the things that have emerged out of that study. And they're very interesting and paint an optimistic picture for us, especially since now we can combine that instrument with the vision plan. I think you're going to start to see a lot of things occur in town, at least more than would have had we done nothing.
Excellent. Excellent. Yep, and we need to stay, use all of our resources to keep this vision alive, including the real estate community chamber and everyone. That's
Yeah, and had that discussion also, Mayor, with Lori as well.
great. All right, that's it, Rick. Thank you. All right, look for a motion to adjourn.
Adjoin?
Nope, nobody wants to move. All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Opposed?
Nine o'clock.